Hello everyone, welcome to track 2 for those mostly that stayed. Just a quick reminder again, there is a contest on CornCon.net for Hacker Jeopardy. Please feel free to sign up for tonight's. And next we have up is John Bonar, who's a security engineer from Collins. He's going to give us a great presentation on risk management framework, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the NIST SP 800 series. The fact he loves that is a problem, but we'll get there. Yeah, big round of applause for John, everyone. Thank you.
How's everyone doing today? Excellent. So I'm going to be careful because my voice carries a lot, so I'm not going to try and kill everybody with the audio on YouTube when this gets published. Basically, first thing I want everybody is, it's a little bit of a fun, tongue-in-cheek, high-level presentation of NIST Special Publication 800 series. We're going to focus on a few of them, but really this is a very high level, like the CISSP. It's a mile wide and an inch deep with a couple of little levels. So anyway, first thing is, if you're not familiar with the NIST 800 series, don't worry, panic. I don't want you guys to worry that we're going to do super technical deep dive here, or also stay talking about theoretical high-level controls and start talking about specific baroque parts of one particular doctrine. Another important thing I gotta say is the opinions that I express do not represent position, opinions, or implied endorsement by any entity of the U.S. federal government, Collins Aerospace, or Raytheon Technologies, Dakota State University, the Department of Defense, no such agency, DCSA, NIST, or any other alphabet soup organization. A little bit about me. I am actually legally Darth Vader. It's in my middle name. I'm an information system security engineer, solutions architect, system administrator for Collins Aerospace and Mission Systems Organization, particularly supporting secure lab environments. I've got my CISSP, my Security Plus. I've got about 60 Dell certified system expert certifications, because every single product has a certification from Dell. I'm a former Apple certified Mac technician, and I've got my PDI Plus, which means I know how to use printers and scanners. I've been in the defense aerospace industry for over a decade. The whole time, starting with Rockwell Collins and Collins Aerospace, UTC, and now Raytheon Technologies. I've actually spent over 25 years working in IT, getting paid to do it. So I'm more of a computer geek than I am a security geek, but I actually really like both sides of the fence. So I can help the security people understand the IT side and vice versa, which helps smooth things out with programs and getting applications fixed. I have experience in implementing NIST 853 control programs that have controls from 853, also from 171, which is also called CMMC, DFARS, or protection of controlled and classified information. No one been able to actually tell me if there's an official stance on what it's supposed to be called, because I've got 19 different answers from different people. I'm also a gamer geek, Dungeons and Dragons, D&D players. Excellent. By the way, she plays D&D. You definitely have to buy a candy bar for her so she can on this trip. So seriously, candy bars. I also play computer video games. I'm currently a graduate student in the Master of Science in Cyber Defense at Dakota State University. I've also got my bachelor's from there in cyber operations and an associate's in AS in network and security administration, and about 6 or 7 other undergrad certificates. And I also like riding a recumbent tricycle around all over the place, even though I'm a big, tall, fat dude and I don't look like I could ever ride a bike. Moving on here real quick. This presentation is kind of geared towards people that are looking for guidance in their information assurance programs or cybersecurity programs, as well as for people who might be interested in careers in federal service, the defense industrial base, healthcare, critical infrastructure, state or federal service, and most assuredly cybersecurity. I'm going to cover a few things here. We're going to talk about what NIST is, little bit of their history, start talking about what the NIST Special Publication 800 series is, and then we're going to dive into the first one, which is called Risk Management Framework. Then we'll jump into 853, 171, 181. Some other publications that are really cool, and there's some very nice tools that are out there that if your organization is looking for a really solid framework and series of technical publications out there to help you improve your cybersecurity compliance in there, or you have to fight with a whole bunch of different ones. Like say you've got PCI DSS, you've got HIPAA, and you've also got some federal contracts that you're supporting or subcontracting to. It's a ton of different frameworks, but the nice thing is that NIST 853 supersedes all of them, so you can actually map to your ISO controls and all that. It's really fun. But the Department of Defense, in particular, provides a lot of really cool tools on technical implementation and validation throughout all of federal service, and some other cool tools and helpful resources. And then I have a little bit of a quick contest before we jump to Q&A. And I will apologize, I might be going 90 miles an hour. If I'm going too fast, just throw something at me or say, hey, and I'll try to slow it down. So first thing I want to talk about is what is NIST? NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This is an organization, this is a federally funded organization that is responsible for applied research into physical sciences, material sciences, cybersecurity, quantum, and a lot of other really cool pure research applications. They are also responsible for several standards such as the Federal Information Processing Standard, FIPS, FISMA. They're responsible for measurements and weight standardization and maintaining those. They have 6 national laboratories across the country that are devoted specifically towards advancing science in a variety of categories. Not for in general. They do partner with companies, with organizations like DARPA and stuff like that, but they are straight a pure science and standards organization. The NIST Special Publication 800 series, the SP 800, is a large volume and still growing volume of a library of documents that are published and updated quite regularly by NIST, who forms joint task force to have several people that are specialists within inside the government, and then they bring in academia, industry, and other professionals to help comment and help build these documents. So these cover all kinds of stuff on information assurance, security, privacy. The NIST SP 800 series has a direct mapping of its controls to ISO 27001. So that way, if you are having to deal with international compliance, which is generally ISO, everything has mappings to ISO. So if you have to deal with a particular European framework or Japan's framework or Australia's, you can take this document, tie it to ISO, and then bring it right back down into your country and the other country you've got to meet compliance on. In addition, there's all kinds of other really cool stuff like container hardening, Kubernetes, incident response planning, assessment, zero trust, identity management. There's a whole document just about passwords on how to implement the proper, solid, secure password policy for both basically your regular users and your privileged users of your system administrators. PKI, biometrics, and multi-factor authentication. If there's something, information assurance in a particular category, especially on the IT side, there's probably a NIST document for it. One of the big documents is 837, which is called Risk Management Framework. And this is a policy and architectural lifecycle framework that is specifically designed to have a continuous life cycle of information systems for an organization. And there are other supporting documents that apply in this, but it's a 6/7 step program where you basically start off by figuring out, categorize the information system, and then you select your controls based off of a series of different, there's 20 different categories that you would select, and there are a bunch of different overlays that say, hey, I need to have a moderate level of confidentiality, a low level of integrity, and a low level of availability. Or if you have something that's ultra critical, where, such as like, an emergency response, like a 911 dispatch center for a region, and things like that, you've got to have high confidentiality, you have to have high integrity, you have to have high availability. It helps you pick and choose the controls that you need to put into your information assurance programs to make sure that you're able to properly, second here, the senior moment, I believe it's called, or divide by zero. Basically select your controls, and then the next step to begin implementing those controls is you create your information system, or you begin to upgrade an existing one. And then what you do is you will assess those controls against what you have implemented. And this is generally where you would have, on the government side, you would have like a security control assessor that reports to your authorizing official, or the guy that actually gives you permission to the person that gives you, allows you to actually do the upgrade and run your information system to process data and execute your mission objectives. That person will come out and either physically or remotely review your system, your controls, your policies, your procedures, your standards, and basically they look at the whole. Wow, I'm really good at failing to find words at the moment. They look at the whole ecosystem of the environment. So it's not just, I'm just going to go look at your group policy and I'm going to look at your scene. They're going to look at, well, they're going to want to see your policies and your procedures to just make sure that you do have a proper incident response plan, that you are properly auditing your systems to make sure that if there is a bad actor or a threat actor who's compromised the computer, you're able to detect it and respond to it and eliminate that threat, and then take action to prevent that from happening in the future. Additionally, then after you assess the controls, your authorizing official, that might be your CISO in a commercial enterprise, will approve the system to be brought into production or be given an authority to operate. And then you will monitor the system, and then at that point, you'll begin the process again, making sure that you've got the right controls, you've got the right policies, you've got the right procedures, and you've got the right people, tools, and equipment in place in order to make sure that your organization is running securely and safely. But that's what risk management framework, that document is. It is, unfortunately, it is one of the more baroque documents that NIST has published, but overall, there's some excellent reviews out there on YouTube that make it really nice. That can help you explain out some of the different pieces that are a little bit hard to grasp sometimes. But overall, this gives you a really solid life cycle to build off of, with lots of reference information and documents that helps your organization refine and improve its information assurance program continuously. The next big chunky document in the NIST 800 series is 853 revision 5. And there's actually three different parts of 853. There's 853, 853A, and then B. So 853 is a vendor-neutral set of controls and enhancements to those controls spread across 20 different families, which include things like auditing, physical security, identity management, media protection, system of procurement, and all these different controls throughout the whole family. Total, if you were to go look at every single one of them, there's 1,190 controls and enhancements altogether throughout the NIST 853 document. It does not mean that every single control is required to be implemented. They have a number of overlays that are selected based on the sensitivity of your data, the importance of the mission. So if you have to be operating 24/7, there are different controls that you select. If you have PII, there's a privacy overlay designed to protect people's private PII from exposure or manipulation. And there's many different overlays. But basically, you look at your CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and you select the level of controls you need to have on there. Many systems you would find in federal information systems are generally defined as moderate, low. And even the low level of integrity and availability is pretty robust. Additionally, there includes, it calls out other documents and provides guidance. Not only, so it doesn't just give you a control, it gives you control and discusses it, and gives you some information to work off of it. But it's a vendor neutral, solution neutral explanation, which makes it sometimes really helpful and sometimes really difficult when they have to specifically walk around and avoid saying you need to use 802.1x to control your network layer, and things like that. Again, there's the mapping to ISO 27001, and in addition to having like the NIST privacy overlay, there is the document part A of 853 tells you, it provides guidance on how to assess those controls in your information systems and in your organization, and then part B helps you define your baseline, your control baselines. And this here is an example of control. This is the audit family. This one's security and privacy engineering principles. It's broken down into, it provides the control text, which is actually a very small chunk of it. Then it goes into it provides additional information, and then it also talks about other controls that apply to this control. And then at the very bottom, you also see that there's an enhancement. And enhancements are optional in most cases, unless an overlay particularly calls out an enhancement where your organization's leadership determines that that enhancement is needed for the reason to support the business in its security status. Next here, this is just a quick list of how the different controls in 853 map directly to different ISO 27001 controls. So this lets you easily deal with other security framework protections that you need to have for, say you've got an office in France. You've got to meet the European Union's security and privacy controls like GDPR and stuff like that. This document allows you to go, hey, we're a NIST-based organization, here's how we map our controls. Here's how our controls map to ISO, so that way when you go work, when your security personnel have to go meet with the regulators in France, they're able to speak to the ISO documentation, even though you're set up and built as a NIST-based organization. Jumping to another one, this one's actually probably, so if you do anything, if your organization deals anything with federal contracting, with the Department of Defense or subcontracting, since 2014, every single new contract that's come out has required uncontrolled, unclassified information to be protected. The controls are in 800-171. This is also called DFARS or CMMC or CUR. This is 853's little brother. There's a lot less controls in here. They're laid out completely differently, but they have direct mappings to 853. And instead of having to look at up to almost 1,200 controls, you only have 121 controls to look at. And this includes physical security, data integrity, authentication. We call out specific things like using multi-factor authentication. Some very common sense stuff that some people, Colonial Pipeline place, I don't know what that is, but obviously we're doing vulnerability assessment and monitoring, ensuring your computers are meeting a compliance baseline as well. I mean, there's some excellent stuff in here. Some of it will obviously come across to some organization leaders as common sense, but it's spelled out here so that way as part of developing your information assurance / security program, you can make sure that you are meeting your compliance objectives and you're documenting it. because some of the biggest problems with that organizations have, especially in IT and security organizations, is lack of documentation. That never happens. We've never had a problem with documentation not existing for something, especially when it's a really old solution, right? Basically, the other thing about 171 is it doesn't matter how far away from the flagpole you are. If you're creating a widget that goes in a thing, that goes in a doohickey, that goes in a plane for the Air Force, you are bound. You are required to follow these controls for anything regarding that information that might be considered controlled by the government. You're responsible for meeting these compliance requirements within your organization on the systems that process that information. And failure can result in debarment from federal contracts. If it's determined to be malicious, which means you can be removed from any current contract and you're forbidden from, for a period of time up to including forever, from being able to participate or bid on any other contract with the federal government again. So this compliance with this is a really serious business for any subcontractor or organization that contracts to a Department of Defense entity. And that's really kind of covered pretty much most of the important documents. There's one here I forgot to put a slide in for called NIST 800-181. And this is also called the NIST framework. And this actually has been a big deal because for the longest time, federal service had a huge problem with aligning IT and security roles and responsibilities and job titles. One person who could be a principal system administrator in one organization was a systems engineer in another organization, and this created a huge problem with trying to make sure that people were moving between different roles in federal service and contracting with industry. You had to know the culture of every single unique organization within the federal government to understand what their IT roles were and their security roles were. And this created a huge problem. So about 10 years ago, they began working on this NIST framework, and this came out in 2014, I believe. The NIST framework centralized all that under NIST and provided very strong job roles and responsibilities, certification requirements for those roles and responsibilities, career path progressions for those roles and responsibilities, and really generally set a solid groundwork for federal information systems on the information assurance and the technical side, which was something that had been sorely lacking. And that document is excellent for organizations that might have absorbed other companies from an HR perspective and from a security perspective. One organization's engineer might be another system's administrator. I've seen organizations that had tier 1 engineers who were phone center help desk kids who were in college working on their computer science degrees. In other organizations, you weren't an engineer until you had a 4-year degree. Basically, if you didn't have a 4-year degree in a STEM field, you couldn't be an engineer. And it's still a problem. So centralizing and condensing your job roles and getting them all in the flat roll makes it a lot easier for you to speak around your organization, especially as the organizations grow larger and larger. But that's covering NIST 800-181. Some very cool things I'd like to talk about is some other cool features, tools that are available, regardless of whether or not you're a NIST organization and you're just looking for ways to save yourself organization time from having to develop hardened tools to make sure that your systems are secure from a control perspective and from a security settings. One of these is Team Baby Yoda. This is the Department of the Air Force Chief Software Officer office, which I know sounds really weird. put together a team called PlatformOne, and they've worked in the open source community with many vendors out there who have gone out and went through the effort of hardening, creating a container orchestration platform that leverages open standards, open solutions wherever possible, and they've worked with vendors to provide things like the Red Hat Universal Base Image at no cost to everyone, as well as they're one of the first organizations in DoD to implement a full zero trust approach to their deployments, whether it was on-prem or in cloud. And basically, they build off of they help work on the Kubernetes and container hardening guides with NIST. So these guys have worked really hard to develop a system to create hardened containers for things like GitLab, Atlassian tools, and Nginx, and all these other different services that you need in order for your software engineers, your software developers to build tool chains and environments such as highly scalable DevSecOps pipelines or DevOps pipelines, being able to do model-based system engineering, and being able to manage having things be able to be developed and pushed, rapidly tested, with high levels of assurance that the code is secure, it executes properly, and you're able to do digital testing in simulated environments so that you can actually commit code, and 15 minutes later you know whether or not that code is going to break your prod environment when you need to put without ever having to push the prod. And this also gives you excellent A/B testing and things like that. And for people outside, inside federal system, the federal information systems, this was literally a groundbreaking thing for them. So I know that companies like Flickr and Instagram have been doing things with DevOps for years, over a decade in some cases. But on the federal side, this was totally new. This was like Lightspeed. They went through and fought for a long time, and they got an accredited Department of Defense wide reciprocity on a continuous ATO or authority to operate that allows programs, once they've been approved to use this platform, to bring DevOps and DevSecOps and merge security development and operations into single pipelines. And it's really done a tremendous amount of good in there. And the best part is everyone in here can access all of that knowledge and all those hardened containers for free. Doesn't mean that you're going to have licenses to use all of it, because Atlassian is like Splunk. They like taking large amounts of organizations' money into their own bank accounts. Next thing is the Defense Information Systems Agency, or DISA, releases a bunch of templates and guidance called State Secure Technical Implementation Guides. This is documentation and XML-based files that allow you to follow a process to harden systems, and you can tailor that hardening and test those systems using other tools like SCAP, which is the Security Compliance Automation Protocol, which there is one that the federal government releases off the public.cyber.mil site called SCAP. There's another open source group called the OpenSCAP Workbench. These have things like Cisco, NetApp, EMC appliances, generic web applications. This stuff really, it helps you look through and evaluate at a technical level controls. It ties these controls, it ties those settings, those hardware settings, back to specific controls inside the NIST documentation. So that way you understand what's there, and if your organization says, oh, I can't implement this particular technical control, you understand where it is on the policy side, where you're missing, what control you're missing and why. And so that way you can communicate to upper leadership, hey, we can't enable this thing because, like, we can't enable fixed mode on Red Hat for our developers because they make kernel modules, And if you try to compile a kernel module in FIPS mode, it breaks the kernel module when you compile. So you can take that control, you can turn that into business management language, and you can take that to leadership and go, hey, if we enable this control, we can't make widgets for this software program. And that's actually extremely helpful, because sometimes our biggest problem for analysts and system admins is converting the technical reason why we have to do something into a compliance or business justification. It's often sometimes can be very hard to convince leadership who does not understand geek that we can't, why something can't be done or why something needs to be done. Oh, there's my nice, completely put it in the wrong order. So this is the nice framework. So this framework is also being used one more thing, is also being used to help define, and they're working with universities and other academic organizations to help drive skill sets needed for specific job roles such as cyber. NSA and the Department of Homeland Security both have certified programs of excellence for cyber operations and cyber defense. And that means that those academic organizations are working with the federal government to address specific needs for skill sets and educational needs for students, so that when they finish their degree, they are prepared to enter the workforce and have the right skills needed to not just work in federal service, but to be solid cybersecurity professionals, whether they're red team, blue team, purple team, or green team. This next slide here is going to talk about a few things here. The Defense Counterintelligence Security Administration, or DCSA, has an assessment and authorization process manual, and as well as that is specifically geared towards classified information systems. Additionally, they are responsible for publishing another document called the Joint Special Access Program Implementation Guide, or the JSIG. And what these documents really are is they take the NIST 853, lay out all the controls, and then provide additional guidance. So you can go look at these controls in 853, or you can go look at a very cool spreadsheet in the DAPM, and you can see all the controls, all the enhancements, all the cool stuff that's in 853, which is a 400-page long document. Or you can look at a 23-page spreadsheet which has everything laid out in filterable columns, and you can go through there and it'll tell you what DCSA recommends from a cybersecurity perspective to meet this control, or from a policy perspective, and also how often we should be auditing it from their perspective. Again, geared towards national security information systems, so take that with a grain of salt if you don't have to worry about having collateral programs at your organization. You can dial it back, obviously, if you think that you will still meet the risk tolerance of your organization. Next slide right here is a bunch of tools that have been extremely helpful in meeting cybersecurity compliance requirements in this special publication 800. On the paid side, you've got things like Nessus, Tenable, and Expose. Those are great vulnerability and compliance scanning suites. They're expensive. They're really expensive. Not Splunk or Atlassian level, but they're pricey. But the nice thing is they have all the STIGs already baked into everything, so that when you go scan a computer or a web app, it's going to report back what your compliance level is in real time when that scan happens. So it helps you show not only vulnerabilities in your system, it shows you your compliance standpoint from an operational level and things. So that it really helps the organization, especially the security organization, make sure that stuff is, make sure that things are actually configured the way they need to be. It reinforces baseline and enhances your audit. Splunk, another great organization, as said before by the previous speaker, that likes transferring your money to their accounts. They actually have a really good product, and it's very modular and capable, and they have on-prem and cloud solutions, so depending on what your organization needs are, and if you need a very strong, robust seating, they're one of the better ones out there. Veeam, Veritas Backup Exec are excellent backup tools, and also both implement FIPS 140-2 encryption verified crypto engines, so that you have a high level of assurance that your backups are protected at rest. In case someone were to walk away with tape or a hard drive with their backups, there's going to be they're going to have nation-state level capabilities to crack that encryption. Some other tools, Admin Arsenal makes a product called PDQ Employee and PDQ Inventory. This is fantastic for small businesses. It lets you be able to talk to all your Windows computers, deploy patches, deploy software. It makes your life a lot easier when you can't do things like SCCM or manage some of those other tools out there. And then obviously antivirus to companies like McAfee, Sophos, Symantec. On the free side, you can get from DISA the Stig Viewer, OpenSCAP Workbench Group, Nessus Essentials. So if you're a small business with less than 15 or 25 devices, you can get Nessus for free. ClamAV is another free antivirus tool. Visual Studio Code, because it's just fantastic. Kali, Ghidra for reverse engineering, Remix for reverse engineering. BitLocker and Lux are fantastic tools, and BitLocker is FIPS validated, as is Lux for Red Hat and CentOS, because they use the same crypto engine. Plus PlatformOne, if your organization is doing container orchestration and right now you're just pulling your stuff from Docker Hub, look at PlatformOne. You can leverage some great containers. There's some great capabilities there, and it's free to pull the containers from them. Also, we've got organizations that we can go look for. NIST, obviously, US CERT. NSA publishes a tremendous amount of really cool documentation with the commercial solutions for classified, the CNSSI, and the Cross-Domain Solution Council, as well as general IT security publications. And then we have the National Vulnerability Database and MITRE CVE database. And then I have one contest. First off, thank you for everyone that's in public safety, and also for those who serve. And if anyone knows who this person is in this picture, please let me know, and I will buy you a soda or an adult beverage if you're of age. And our nation's capital is named after him. That's the end. So, sorry, I'm a bit of a history geek.
Columbia. Columbia.
Correct. Columbia is the goddess. What used to be before the Civil War was the spirit of America. She was a Roman goddess of liberty. Washington, D.C. was named after her, with the District of Columbia. And now we get to my really cool hacker picture I found off Google. Does anyone have any questions? I know I just went through a ton of information very quickly.
I'm just disappointed you didn't transition from Columbia into Rocky Horror and go on.
It's just a step to the left.
There you go.
So how long if the organization's not been using NIST and RMF? What kind of timeline might they be looking at?
So RMF came out in 2014 is when it got finalized, but it was in draft for almost 2 years because there was before RMF existed, there was the common criteria, which still kind of exists, but doesn't really exist anymore. And then there was the ODAA, and I can't remember what that acronym stands for, but the ODA process was there, and NIST 853 existed, but there was no real framework around life cycle of information assurance, including for physical or cyber, prior to that. Within the federal government, organizations and different departments would have their own policies about how things were supposed to be run. DoD, we know, had the Rainbow Series and then the common criteria. But no one really had, all these different organizations had different frameworks and policy guidance and all these different things, and then NIST was brought in to centralize all that and come up with a common framework for all federal information systems. So 2014 is when RMF landed of the ODA process, was not retired by DCSA, which was then called Defense Security Services. Wasn't retired until 2017 for some certain information systems. The process has significantly changed with RMF. ODA was literally a checklist, and a lot of it was not as robust. There was not as much focus on life cycle. It was more about, do you meet these, can you checkbox for some systems. Alrighty, I think we're going to have some time back at this point. This slide deck is available for anyone who wants to get a hold of me about it. I've included a whole bunch of links to some of the U.S. government stuff, including and the OpenSCAP work group as well. That way you can go find this stuff. It's free to download, free to use. There's excellent stuff there. US CERT actually has some really cool stuff, and they have an email list, so you can get notified of disclosures, vulnerability disclosures and things like that in your email. So your information assurance, you can look, as a team, you can be like, oh, I didn't realize that Microsoft had a critical vulnerability, or 13 of them that they patched last month. I'm a big fan of warbirds, by the way, and planes, especially big ugly planes like the Puff. You can email, here's my email information. You can email me at darthvader.bonar@trojans.dsu.edu or john.bonar@me.com. Here's my credits slide. And yes, Kung Fury is an awesome movie. And then I leave everyone with a little bit of A10 Warthog fun.